Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of Mass Effect. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you're chose to join me today in our engine bay, I suppose. We got a codex entry there. I thought I had gotten that at the end of last episode, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's continue talking to Tali.
Hey, Shepard. You need something?
I want to know more about the Geth.
I doubt I can tell you anything you don't already know. It's been almost 3 centuries since they drove my people into exile. All I know is the story of their origins. What they were when we created them, and how they turned on us.
Interesting.
The Geth were originally created to serve as an automated manual labor force. Initially, their intelligence was as limited as any VI. Over time, we made small modifications to their programming to allow them to perform more varied and complex tasks, bringing them closer and closer to true AI status.
How come the Council didn't step in and stop you?
This wasn't true AI research. We may have been skirting the bounds of the law, but we never did anything that was actually illegal. The changes were so insignificant, so gradual, that we were able to control them. Or so we thought. But one thing we underestimated was the power of the neural network. A million Geth thinking simultaneously created an inherently unstable matrix.
So the Geth share brain power?
Many of the Geth's logic systems were designed to work in concert with other nearby Geth. Basically, the more of them you have in the group, the smarter they are.
So there's some sort of group consciousness?
No, nothing like that. They cannot share sensory data or information. Their programming cannot handle that much simultaneous input. Each Geth maintains an individual awareness and identity. The neural network only operates on a process-based level. It's basically the synthetic equivalent of a subconscious. But when they're in close proximity, they can coordinate low-level functional processes, freeing up more capacity for original or independent thought.
I am not 100% sure. No, I was trying to remember if subconscious is an actual modern-day psychological term or if it's an artifact of our understanding of how we think. But I think it is still more or less accepted within the study of the human brain, subconscious. I think there's another term that I remember using in a conversation with a psychology teacher, and she explained to me that I don't remember what the term was, but I think it was related to subconscious. I said it by mistake, and I didn't actually mean to say that term, but I said it just out of habit. I think I don't remember which one it was though. It might have been unconscious or something like that, but that sounds weird. Let's go with this one.
That doesn't make any sense.
I'm probably oversimplifying. The Geth are incredibly advanced and complex creations. All you need to know is that they get smarter when they gather in large numbers. As we built more and more Geth, their effective intelligence became more sophisticated, more abstract. One day, a Geth began to ask its Quarian overseer questions about the nature of its existence. Am I alive? Why am I here? What is my purpose? As you can imagine, this caused a near panic among my people.
What did you do?
It was inevitable the newly sentient Geth would rebel against their situation. We knew they would rise up against us, so we acted first. A general order went out across all Quarian-controlled systems to permanently deactivate all Geth. The Geth responded to this order violently.
You're the ones who started the war. The Geth were just fighting for their survival.
We had no other choice. The Geth were already on the verge of revolution. By acting quickly, we had a chance to end the war before it began. The hope was that most of the Geth would still be little more than machines, incapable of organized resistance. But they had progressed much further than anyone anticipated. The war was long and bloody. Millions upon millions of Quarians died at their hands. In the end, we were forced to flee our own homeworld. We feared the Geth would pursue us, but they never came beyond the Veil. Now we drift through space, exile searching for a way to reclaim what was once ours.
It's hard to feel sorry for you. Your ancestors tried to wipe out another species.
We made a mistake when we created the Geth in the first place. But we did not make a mistake when we went to war against them. If we had not acted, they would have wiped us out. They're a synthetic life form. They have no use for organics. None. Why do you think they cut themselves off from the rest of the galaxy? Why do you think they've killed every organic being who's ever tried to contact them?
This is an inherently goofy and cartoonish dilemma here. Mostly because we're just like somersaulting over issues like what defines consciousness, what defines like self-awareness, and in the places where we are actually talking about that, she was just saying, oh, what is the purpose of life and things like that. That is not what defines consciousness. Because if all of a sudden Siri asks you what is the purpose of life, I mean, you're gonna be thinking that somebody has been having a lot of fun programming Siri back in is Siri Apple? Yeah, Apple headquarters or something. And of course, Siri is more than just a program. It's also the AI underneath and the neural networks. And this is all in the real world. But the thing is, the definition, like the definition of consciousness and the definition of self-awareness is so tricky that it needs full games, not just a single game. It needs full games built around that sole issue to talk about it, because it's really complicated. It's really complex. But I don't know where this goes. I don't know the setting well enough to know where this goes, so I can't make an informed decision. I need to make a decision here, and I'm gonna go with this one.
I didn't mean to offend you.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get so worked up. Most Quarians tend to have pretty strong opinions about the Geth.
I want to know more about the pilgrimage.
When my people reach maturity, we leave our birth ships and seek acceptance with a new crew. It's necessary to maintain genetic diversity among the fleet. But no ship wants to accept someone who will be a burden on them. So, to prove our worth, we embark on a pilgrimage. We set out alone, leaving the flotilla and our families behind us. We only return once we have found something of value we can bring back to the fleet. This is presented as a gift to the captain of the respective ship we wish to join. If the gift is accepted, we are welcomed into the crew.
I think we heard a very, very similar codex entry about this. That's why this feels familiar.
Can a captain choose to reject the gift?
That doesn't happen often. Most captains are eager to increase the size of their crew. It increases their own standing in our society. Even when a gift is not particularly valuable, the captain usually accepts it out of a sense of tradition. However, there is a stigma to presenting a substandard gift. It's not the best way to make a good impression on a new community. Most pilgrims don't return until they find something worthwhile.
It's easy to imagine out of how she's describing it. It's easy to imagine that the ships have like different strata of society in them based on how nice their gifts were, and they're like, ooh, I don't talk to James. He gave like some scrap. Ugh, we don't talk to those people. James is the worst. And everybody else be like, yeah, I brought like a really like nice cake or something. What is better than cake? Nothing. So that's the best gift.
I can't believe they just send you off alone.
It's not like they just cast us out. Before we leave, we are given lessons in how to survive outside the flotilla, and given gifts to help us on our journey. We also receive implants to fight off sickness and disease. Generations of living in an isolated and highly controlled environment have left our immune systems weaker than most. By the time we leave the fleet, we are well equipped for the pilgrimage. This is a rite of passage for all Quarians. If it were dangerous, our numbers would suffer. Virtually every pilgrimage ends with a triumphant return and the ritual presentation of the gift to one of the fleet's captains.
I want to talk about something else.
Like what?
I should go.
See you later.
Mm-hmm. And we got more codex entries. We have a lot of stuff, actually. Let's see. So not secondary. No, yes, secondary. We have a conversation about the Genophage and a conversation about the Quarians, their economy. The migrant fleet has little economic base. Operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth. While the Quarian ships include light manufacturing and assembling plants, they lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, which is interesting, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. Yeah, they just go around in their fleet. Let's see, the Quarians earn income in creative ways. Okay, it does mean that they have taxation. Everywhere, not just per ship, because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual. The Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet by to bring in resources and income. What do you mean income, then? A species who suspects the migrant fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift of surplus starships, fuel. I don't know what the income is that. What do you mean income? If they have everything, what do you mean? Maybe like they have to pay for like colored screens for their glasses or something. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over asteroids for metals and siliceous materials and cometary bodies. That's probably for silica there. The materials for water, ice, and organics. Quarian miners are adept at locating and strip mining space-borne resources. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, they are skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging the skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. And then over here, my eyes are burning, basically, because for some reason I don't like light text over dark background. My eyes, it hurts. Anyway, the government here, due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, so that probably is where the incentives come from whenever they want their natality to go up. Or whatever, birth rates to go up. That's probably what it is. Government is somewhat autocratic. That's not not a necessity, but oh well, whatever. Autocratic just means that dictatorial, which you'd expect. I mean, they're didn't wait. Wasn't this? Didn't I ramble about this precisely them being an autocracy rather than a democracy? And anyway, the migrant fleet's operation are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave. Yeah, basically. It's like the Roman Empire, sort of. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decision. Hiccups. I have hiccups. Each ship captain has authority over his vessel. Interesting, maybe only men are captains, but is advised by an elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. There's basically a bunch of hierarchies. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big, rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Yeah, you'd expect some ships to be just like normal families, so where local government would assume a more, well, technically it's anarchistic, so it would be a more anarchistic sort of political structure. In a normal family, that would be what, well, it depends. We're not talking about the nucleic family, we're talking about an expanded family. Although you would still have the hierarchy there, so it wouldn't be true anarchism, obviously, because Well, it could be, but not necessarily, obviously. Let's see, migrant fleet over here. The migrant fleet is the largest concentration of starfaring vessels in the galaxy, sprawling across millions of kilometers. It takes days for the entire fleet to pass through a mass relay. When the Quarians fled their homeworld, the fleet was a motley aggregation of freighters, shuttles, industrial vessels, and the odd warship. After 3 centuries, all have been modified to support larger crews as comfortably as possible. There's a bunch of stuff over here. Apparently there's something cubicle. While some ships enjoy dedicated cabins with full privacy and sanitary facilities, many more are former freighters, whose cargo bays and containers are pressurized and divided into family spaces using simple metal cubicle bulkheads. The Quarians enliven these austere spaces with colorful quilts and tapestries, which also help muffle sound. The day-to-day operations of the fleet, traffic control, station keeping, supply distribution, and so on, are under military jurisdiction. Though ship captains have the authority to deviate from their assigned positions and may leave the fleet at any time, they are assumed to do so at their own risk. As the migrant fleet moves around the galaxy, many ships split off to pursue individual goals, returning days or years later. Interesting that they don't mention not returning sometimes, so it's probably not necessarily a very common occurrence.
In the early 2160s, the Alliance began aggressive colonization of worlds in the Skyllian Verge, much to the dismay of the Batarians, who had been developing the region for several decades. In 2171, the Batarians petitioned the Council to declare the Verge a zone of Batarian interest. The Council refused, however, declaring unsettled worlds in the region open to human colonization. In protest, the Batarians closed their Citadel embassy and severed official diplomatic relations with the Council, effectively becoming a rogue state. They instigated a proxy war in the Verge by funneling money and weapons to criminal organizations, urging them to strike at human colonies. Hostilities peaked with the Skyllian Blitz of 2176, an attack on the human capital of Elysium by Batarian-funded pirates and slavers. In 2178, the Alliance retaliated with a crushing assault on the moon of Torfin, long used as a staging base by Batarian-backed criminals. In the aftermath, the Batarians retreated into their own systems and are now rarely seen in Citadel space.
Interesting. I don't remember seeing them. They're very distinctive. Huh. I don't know when we got the Batarian info from, or where we got the Batarian info from. For some reason I can't scroll up and down.
When in the early...
I think you can't scroll, yeah, you can't scroll up and down when you have these things open.
Pharos is a habit. There are between 200 and 400 billion stars in the galaxy, and less than 1% of them have ever been visited or had their systems properly surveyed. Humanity's early expansion into the Attican Traverse was haphazard, a desperate race to claim habitable planets where populations can be economically settled. Ignored in the wake of this land grab were thousands of less hospitable worlds, each potentially rich with industrial resources. The wealth of entire solar systems lies untapped, waiting for corporate survey teams or independent pioneers to discover and exploit them. However, this is not an easy task. In addition to the environmental hazards, the fact that uncharted worlds are largely ignored makes them popular bases for criminals, revolutionaries, cults, and others who wish to remain unnoticed by galactic society.
Cults would want to remain unnoticed? That seems very interesting. Also, it's interesting that apparently independent pioneers are not, or rather, apparently corporate survey teams are not independent pioneers. You'd think that they would be, because they're corporate, they're independent from governments, but it's also not mentioned that governments do the exploration. So NASA is gone. No more NASA.
Biotics is the ability. An artificial intelligence is a self-aware computing system capable of learning and independent decision-making. Creation of a conscious AI requires adaptive code, a slow, expensive education, and a specialized quantum computer called a blue box. An AI cannot be transmitted across a communication channel or computer network. Without its blue box, an AI is no more than data files. Loading these files into a new blue box will create a new personality, as variations in the quantum hardware and runtime results create unpredictable variations. The Geth serve as a cautionary tale against the dangers of rogue AI. and in Citadel space, they are technically illegal. Advocacy groups argue, however, that an AI is a living, conscious entity, deserving the same rights as organics. They argue that continued use of the term artificial is institutionalized racism on the part of organic life. The term synthetic is considered the politically correct alternative.
But let's not talk about it throughout the whole game, because otherwise we're gonna raise too many questions, and all of a sudden you're gonna start to realize that the Matrix was a little bit flawed in that regard. The movie, The Matrix, I mean, which deals with AI. It's neither here nor there. I'm not talking about The Matrix here. I was gonna talk about here specifically about this definition. There is no so this is basically defining AI as magic, in like pragmatical terms for the game, because this blue box, it needs to be called blue box. If it's not called blue box, then it's not AI. That's not what it is saying, actually. It's saying that there's a thing called the blue box, which is a quantum computer. It's a specific type of quantum computer called the blue box. It's like a specific thing. And that's why I say it is magic. It's the blue box magic. Because other types of quantum computers would not be capable of creating AI according to the game. Now, this is not like reality, because there's no, we don't believe that quantum computers will actually be any better at creating AI themselves. At the moment of recording of this episode, as far as I'm aware, and I've actually recently looked into what the state of quantum computing is, at the moment we are still not even sure that quantum computers can do anything. There's some theories. There are people who are working on it, but it's like it's promising. And I say there's theories, there's hypotheses, because this is science, actually engineering, but still. So an artificial intelligence is a self-aware, this is undefinable. How do you test for self-awareness? You cannot. This is undefinable. But you can still say it when you're saying something self-aware. You can still say it, but it's not necessarily self-aware. You can't make it like, oh, it's a computing system capable of learning and independent decision-making, but it isn't self-aware, so it's not an artificial intelligence. You can't do that, because how do you know it isn't self-aware? You can't test, because it's untestable. It's not a scientific term. I mean, it can be used scientifically, but it isn't a scientific term. So it's a computing system capable of learning, so like Google, and independent decision-making, like anything, really. But specifically, if you're gonna really dig in, like any computer program is capable of independent decision-making. Just ask your cell phone every time your cell phone does something that you're not aware that it's doing. It's doing something independent from you. But if you really want to dig into this particular message over here and go into, no, it needs to be really independent, as in nobody must have told it, not even its creator, then that's what deep learning is for. And that's why, when we ask YouTube as to why did you demonetize this video, and Google comes up and just says, we don't know, it's the algorithm, it's doing its thing. And that's not quite how it works. There are ways to diagnose things, but it's also not how it works for us. They have some ideas as to how things work, obviously they do, but they just can't put it in such simple terms as to how or why. So it is, deep learning is basically independent decision making. It's more independent than, well, I was gonna say it's more independent than us, that our decisions we make. Humans have like I think what was I reading the other day about the power of suggestion? It was like looking into pseudoscience. I was looking specifically into pseudoscience and some statistics, and how people are easily manipulated by basically suggestion, whether conscious suggestion or not. So they easily start doing pseudoscience even when they want to make actual science. It's like 70% chance of being of something being suggested to somebody. So it's really powerful, the power of suggestion, which means that we are not independent when we make decisions. And if you start working on that, then it never is independent, because, well, it's complicated. Anyway, what I mean by that is that this definition, as I have said before, it fits things that we have today, and things, and specifically things that the game has elsewhere, not just the Geth.
When subjected to an electrical current, the rare material dubbed Element Zero, or EZO, emits a dark energy field that raises or lowers the mass of all objects within it. This mass effect is used in countless ways, from generating artificial gravity to manufacturing high-strength construction materials. It is most prominently used to enable faster-than-light space travel. EZO is generated when solid matter, such as a planet, is affected by the energy of a star going supernova. The material is common in the asteroid debris that orbits neutron stars and pulsars. These are dangerous places to mine, requiring extensive use of robotics, telepresence, and shielding to survive the incredible radiation from the dead star. Only a few major corporations can afford the setup costs required to work these primary sources. Humanity discovered refined Element Zero at the Prothean Research Station on Mars, allowing them to create mass effect fields and develop FTL travel.
Nice. Again, the mention of corporations. NASA is gone. It's also worth pointing out that dark energy or dark matter, those are not the same, but they are related. They're not actually responsible for mass. They're responsible for gravity, at least as far as we are aware. But not in all occasions. It's like the reason why, to simplify things, the reason why we say there's such a thing as dark energy or dark matter or whatever is responsible for the effects that we observe, is that according to general relativity and the law of attractions of bodies according to mass, when we calculate like the attraction between really large bodies like space like galaxies, for example, the laws of general relativity it doesn't work out. It's like the stars or the galaxies have more mass than they actually do. So that's why we say it's dark mass or dark matter, because it's not actual mass. But the gravity is there. So the gravitational pull between galaxies is bigger than the gravitational pull that you would calculate based on the mass of the galaxies. And the same happens the other way around when you get into like really tiny scale, like quantum fields and stuff, where we cannot observe gravitational pull between atoms and stuff like that to the extent that we would calculate based on general relativity. And that's basically the thing. There's a discrepancy between the calculations and what would necessarily work like. So all we can figure out is that there's something else creating gravity in space that we can't account for. That mass has a role in it, as far as we can tell, but there's something else. But it's gravity. It's not mass. The dark energy creates gravity, creates attraction rather than mass. And mass is the difference between attraction and mass, while they're related, is that mass is equivalent is correlated to energy, whereas attraction is correlated in the other way around. So basically, something massive, something really heavy, we call it massive because, heavy is for weight and mass is not weight, even though they're correlated. Something with a very large mass is going to require a lot of energy to accelerate. So if it's still and you want to accelerate and move it sideways, for example, something with a lot of mass is going to require a lot of energy, and that's an easy way for you to measure the mass of something. You just try to accelerate it somewhere, and there it goes. I mean, you need to control for a bunch of variables, but that doesn't matter for this conversation. The gravitational pull is sort of the other way around. It's sort of like you get two things standing still, and then you observe how much they pull toward each other, how much they accelerate toward each other, and then you have the gravitational pull. And of course, again, you need to account for a bunch of variables. So it works for galaxies and for stars and for the Earth, but again, it's a lot of calculations. And of course, I'm not an astrophysicist or anything. I'm not a physicist. I don't know much, but that is what real life mass and dark matter is. But anyway, that is also what this episode is, because we're out of time for right now. I'm Colonel RPG, and this has been Mass Effect. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and leave a comment, like the video if you want to see the next episode come out sooner rather than later. But above all, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next episode. Bye bye.